Even if you're not a country music fan, you got to be a fan of the First Amendment.
Friends want to put me down.
You know, I didn't think the Dixie Chicks should be blackballed for being against the Iraq War. That's their First Amendment. We're going to go to Lord Christopher Monckton, a British politician, public speaker, former newspaper editor, and hereditary peer, formerly a member, and this is kind of an older bio, he's like one of the head spokesmen for the Conservative Party. Monckton has been the head of the policy unit for UK Independence Party since 2010. He's the deputy leader of the party under Lord Pearson, and he served as the Conservative Central Office and worked for Margaret Thatcher as one of her chief advisors. He's also a scientist and inventor. He's written for The Universe, The Sunday Telegraph, Today, The Evening Standard, and a lot more. Scienceandpublicpolicy.org and ukip.org are the websites you can find out more about Lord Monckton. Now, let's be clear here. I'm not an Anglophile, but having the last name Jones, I've studied English history, British history, the Britties, the whole nine yards quite a bit. And that's also at the center of world history, kind of the new Roman Empire, so you could say, coming out of England. Now we have the euro being set up by the Bilderberg Group, other globalists. Margaret Thatcher spoke out against that. Through the Treaty of Rome, 1957. Now it's imploding Europe by design. We predicted this years ago with our economist. And calling for a private banking system to run it with the unelected euro bureaucracy with total dictatorial power. Now, I'm even hearing MSNBC. I have even heard MSNBC. I have even heard, because I hear TV on my XM radio, I have even heard Bloomberg, CNBC, others say it's horrible that Germany is a democracy and that they're allowed to vote because they may vote Merkel out. They've almost voted her out twice. It's parliamentary. So if she loses enough seats, she's gone. It's not like an up or down vote. And boy, this is terrible. We need this financial dictatorship to save the world system. But no matter how much you pump into these derivatives, you can't prop them up. How many economists have we had on? It's over 1,500 quadrillion, 1,500 trillion. It's not our debt. But they've got these giant groups of people that are dependent, that burned half of England down a few months ago, as you know, wanting more. You've got the people bringing in record immigrant populations demanding more. 7 billion people wanting to come into the West. And it's unsustainable. And something incredible happened, is why Lord Monckton joins us, and hopefully be with us just a little bit into the next hour so he can really have the floor and break this down. But I have to preface all of this first. Daily Mail, Financial Times. Later I'll read some of the quotes, but I want to go to him because of time. London Telegraph, all reporting. He talks about the Maastricht Treaty and how that exempted the city of London within London, the financial district, kind of like the Vatican has its own city, or D.C. has its own city, or Israel's kind of become its own city-state that is its own sovereign. It was exempt. But if this continues, England is already, most of their laws, Monckton can give you the exact number, but the mainstream news over there says 70+%, are made by unelected bureaucrats, even though the UK people and the Brits at the center of it in England were never allowed to vote on it. They were brought into it like most other EU members, conquered financially through fraud. And here's the Prime Minister David Cameron. UK should stay in EU, says Cameron. He goes on to say, London Independent, it's also in BBC, that he will try to block letting the UK, England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland vote on this. So this is a big deal. My dad called me this morning. He said, why aren't you covering this? You know, I read it yesterday. I barely mentioned it, but I didn't talk about it. John Major's come out and said this is a great way to basically get out of the euro, or to weaken the euro instead of it getting more power, and get UK sovereignty back. So this is a critical time for these people. Okay, this unelected, out of the expert, Lord Monckton, joins us now to break down what the euro really is, what it's doing, this new power grab out of the crisis they've created, and the extraordinary thing of John Major coming out, former head of the Tories, sounding more Margaret Thatcher-esque, saying sovereignty, get out of this world government system. He actually, talks about it. But then the other conservative, current conservative leader, the current Tory, is saying he will try to block the UK from actually having a say in its affairs. Very tyrannical. So to bring us clarity is a big insider, Lord Monckton, who's been at the top of Downing Street, is a top advisor, a journalist, in the middle of it, heading up the UK Independence Party at the highest levels. He can give you the pure inside on what's happening. Lord Monckton, thank you for joining us. Sorry about the 6-minute preface, but I wanted to really try to break down for Americans just how big this is. I mean, it sounds like, you know, Germany today, the world tomorrow, Europe today, the world tomorrow. We're seeing this tyranny try to metastasize, and I see a chance to kill the cancer now. Lord Monckton.
Well, how very good that you introduce it as bluntly as that, because it is a tyranny now. The people of Britain want to get out. They most certainly want to have a say on whether they stay in this monster or get out. And, of course, David Cameron, who pretended before the last election that he would give us a referendum on whether we stay in or come out, has now decided that he wants to join the tyranny, and therefore he won't give us the referendum which he promised us. The Labour Party also promised us a referendum, but they're not very keen on having one either. The fact is that all the major political parties in Britain now have gone socialist. They've gone fascist, really, I suppose is the word for it. They no longer want the British people to have a say in British legislation. To answer one question you raised, it's 5 laws in 6 that are now made by or at the behest of the European dictatorship. 5 out of 6 of our laws, we have no say, no vote, no voice, no power. We are just told what the law is going to be, and we have to salute and obey. And John Major, frankly, it's time he woke up, because it was he who, by forcing Britain into the Maastricht Treaty against the will of the British people, against the will of his own party, split the Conservative Party, created UKIP in effect. I mean, the party was already in existence then, but it was only when he forced us into the Maastricht Treaty, which finally gave away our independence, that many people in the Conservative Party, including me, began to realise that the Conservative Party no longer cared about Britain's democracy. So for him now to change around and say, well, maybe we should start taking back from Europe some of the powers which he gave to Europe, that is a significant event, as is the recent defection to UKIP of the former Conservative leader in the House of Lords, very significant figure, Lord Hesketh, an immensely rich man, and UKIP could always do with money. He has now said he's joining UKIP because he's absolutely fed up to the back teeth with the Conservative Party no longer representing the people. And it was he, under the government of John Major, that forced the Maastricht Treaty through and prevented the House of Lords from demanding, as many of us, my father at that time, wished, a referendum on the issue. He fought that off. So he too is a significant convert from the forces of darkness to the army of light and truth. And what we are seeing now is almost a stampede out of the Tory party and into UKIP, because people have realised that the Tory party has now simply become another version of socialism. It's, if you like, a softer, bluer, greener version of socialism, but it's socialism red in tooth and claw for all that. And socialism, in essence, means dictatorship. It means taking power away from you and me and the ballot box and putting it into the hands of the great and the good, the usual suspects.
And
so these are very, very significant changes, Alex, that are going on here. This is a sea change. I mean, what's going to happen is that UKIP at each election gains a little. In fact, in European elections, it's already the second largest British party, and with David Cameron making the kind of noises he's making now, and with people like John Major, a former Tory Prime Minister, Lord Hesketh, a former Tory leader in the Lords, joining UKIP in saying enough is enough, this has gone too far, this is going to mean at the next European election, which comes up in 2 or 3 years' time, we might well become the largest British party in the European Parliament. That would be a very significant event. Certainly, the trend of events is now moving towards us, because if we move on, if we may, to the euro, this failed project which I think was always designed to fail, and you have also spotted this a long way back.
Well, they've admitted that. In fact, hold on just a second, Lord Monckton, because I want to go back before you expand and continue. For people living in North America, living in the U.S., the magnitude of this, the same shareholders of the European Central Bank are the very same crew that runs our Federal Reserve that is endorsing the October Bolshevik Revolution here. There's no doubt that's what the dominant groups running the Occupy Wall Street are calling for, a collectivism, a demonization of free market, with the big mega banks pushing it, wanting to use the unwashed crowd to scalp any middle-class people that they haven't robbed yet. So your fight is our fight. And so I was thinking I was correct reading this, but you've confirmed that. To have John Major come out, and I mean, these quotes are just astounding in the Financial Times, and say, we don't have a vote in Europe. We need to get our sovereignty back. We need to force this, is a major power structure break. And really shows a huge weakening of Prime Minister David Cameron. And it's another example of how the fascists want to collectivize us down on the farm while they sit back with all the wealth. So it really is fascism sitting upon a collectivist model at the lower level. That's what I've always seen from these people. They want to make it like socialism, fascism, communism, three different things, really just three different flavors of the same cyanide Kool-Aid. But to be specific here with my question, what does this signify to have David Cameron come out and say, I don't want you to be able to vote as we come to this moment of truth where all of Europe is told you will give up whatever sovereignty you have left to an unelected group who will levy taxes upon you? I mean, this is far worse than what King George was doing to the colonies. I mean, this is such naked tyranny, and they're not even lying anymore saying, we're going to do this so we can give you your free welfare. And no, they're saying in Europe, we will give you financial devastation unless you capitulate. I mean, this is so Hitlerian.
Well, I'm afraid one does start using these words like fascist and Hitlerian when one looks at what is happening. And there's no doubt that the political class in Europe, as in America, is now grabbing for absolute power. It's trying to end democracy. It's trying to preserve all the trappings and all the appearance of democracy. You can still go to the polls every 4 years, but it won't make any difference because the decisions will all be taken by people you don't elect. You can't hold to account, you can't question them, you can't remove them, and you can't replace them. We've been living under that system now for 20 or 30 years with the Hitlers of the European Union. Of course, they don't wear jackboots. Of course, they don't go around gassing people anymore. It's not that kind of thing. What it is, though, is it could very easily lead to that, because if you don't keep democracy as a constant injection of restraint and common sense into the governing system, then that's the way things go towards ever greater extremism. You only have to look at this whole climate rubbish. Now, anybody with half a brain can see that that's been oversold prodigiously. And yet the entire governing class worldwide went for it. Why? Not because they cared about whether it was true or not. All they cared about was it convenient? Was it expedient? Was it profitable? Was it going to give them this power that they want in ever larger chunks?
It was another power grab, so that's my question. That's my question before we get back into the whole latest on climate. What is going to happen then in England if you have John Major coming out and saying we deserve to be able to vote and we need to get out of the euro or at least weaken it? And then you've got all these people prancing around in the fake Labour parties and the fake Tory parties, as you said, giving you two choices of the same thing. That's their modern tyrannical way. What is going to happen is they're purely revealed. I mean, most of the European countries were brought in without a vote. Now they're being told you'll have no authority over taxes. I mean, this is incredible. I mean, all you've got to do is call them out, and you'd think they would just fall, but they don't.